Hello and welcome to CryptoSimplified, a podcast series about cryptocurrencies and their future. This week, as we record this episode, the prices of all leading virtual currencies on Indian cryptocurrency exchanges have bounced back after a brief blip. Indeed, that's the day in the life of a cryptocurrency, some might argue. But what's the big picture like? What promise does the underlying technology hold for us? Joining me on the call today is CEO of Policy 4.0, Tanvi Ratna, who is entrenched in this technology. Welcome, Tanvi.
Thanks, Abhishek. It's good to be here.
Thank you. And you're not the average crypto enthusiast, are you? You are an advisor with an experience in blockchain. You've written columns for CoinDesk. You help in policy making. What got you interested in the technology in the first place? Not everybody does that.
Yeah, so I've had a fairly unorthodox sort of journey to this. So I was an engineer a long time back at Georgia Tech. I've been in the policy space for a long time. So I graduated Georgetown many years ago. And I used to work with Hillary Clinton under her division. I was in the Foreign Affairs Committee of the US Congress. And I moved to India about now 8-9 years ago to work with our now Prime Minister. I worked on his election campaign of 2014. I was then at Ernst & Young for several years where I was handling government advisory. So I've been very deeply entrenched in the policy landscape of India and also many of global strategic debates. And I was got into it really at Ernst & Young, where I was handling a lot of emerging technology projects for the government. And then eventually, was also their blockchain lead for some time, both with government side as well as private sector. But I was increasingly handling a lot of their blockchain portfolio. And that's when I really sort of got into it. And I think as with most people who get into it, they don't leave. It's just an endless rabbit hole. I think for me, it's, the question that I really look at is always the one that looks at the state and the technology, right? And I think it's a never-ending question. I think now we're seeing it play out in India.
I have to stop you there and say that that's quite an intimidating profile in terms of the depth of experience that you've had. And I bet it must be that much tougher to explain to a layman or your neighbor about what exactly do you do. I wonder if Oxford already has introduced blockchain as a word in the dictionary. I'm not so sure, but it's something that is fairly new. What does Policy 4.0 do, and what does a think tank do, very briefly? And then we dive into the elephant in the room, which is the bill that is slated to be introduced in the parliament, which has shaken up the crypto world recently. What does Policy 4.0 do to begin with?
Yeah, so think tanks are a fairly established part of the policy ecosystem. I mean, think tanks are essentially the knowledge hubs or the sort of intelligentsia which provides the kind of analysis and the inputs that policymakers need, because every sector needs its own sort of analysis. Like in blockchain, many players need market analysis. In policy, you need a lot of policy analysis and you need a lot of regulatory analysis, and so that's what we do. And it was really with that mission that we set up. So Policy 4.0 derives its name from Industry 4.0. That's our real mission, is to build policy and high quality policy advisory for India on emerging technology, because I think that's where the real future story is of India. And there's a huge gap, I think, in our policy apparatus and sort of understanding and responding to these issues. And I think the government also realizes this, that these are sort of critical technologies for our future. But you can't always just take knowledge from other countries and fit it here, because we have a very different sort of legal system. We have a very different policy landscape. Our whole citizen demography is very different, right? So you need to be able to do original thinking for here. And that's what we endeavor to do. And we just recently launched our regulatory recommendation as well for the government on this India wallet concept for regulating crypto.
And you talked about emerging technologies, innovation and original thinking right now. And it doesn't get any newer as a concept than cryptocurrency, especially in India. Why do you think the government is so skeptical of the whole thing? For instance, it hasn't really taken an instant liking to the concept, although the government does say that they have got nothing against the underlying technology that fuels the entire thing, a blockchain, for instance, and the bill that is on the anvil. Two or three top reasons why you think what the government standpoint is.
Yeah, I think the reasons are fairly obvious. I mean, there's not really any government that's taken a big liking to cryptocurrency. You are basically dealing with a instrument that's very much trying to sort of decentralize governments themselves, and that's not really something any government wants to allow. And I think, we've laid out quite well in our report what are all the risk considerations for India, policy risk considerations around crypto, and they basically fall under four buckets. There is the monetary side of it, which are the most compelling risks, which are financial stability, exchange rate risk, cross-border flow, systemic risk, all of these issues. Then you have the market regulation side, where you have investor protection, regulation of market actors, you have prevention of frauds and manipulation. You have the illicit activity side, which is a very big concern, where you have avoiding money laundering, avoiding terrorism financing, anything around tax avoidance, all those are issues. And then, of course, the final compulsion is in terms of the tech race, right, that the world is in. So you need to keep India competitive enough that it can actually play a role in the future of this, while also managing the rest, which is not easy at all. And so that is really the undertaking we did at our think tank, and we have now come out with that report, and I think it's garnering a lot of attention across the ecosystem.
Right. And on the other hand, the cryptocurrency exchanges, they retort that, hey, we have the KYC norms and your relevant identification, etc., is taken in any country, as you rightly mentioned. They haven't taken to it like fish takes to water, for example, because usually laws catch up with technology. Is there something that can be learned from other countries which are slightly ahead of the curve?
Not all of the things can be copied here, but I think there are some very good frameworks around, for example, exchange regulation, which you can take from countries, which are around token classification, which are around things like listing rules, prospectus requirements, and things like that, which control what tokens and things can be listed. I think there's precedent in some things, but there isn't really precedent in the main risks, which are to do with capital controls, exchange rate risk, and all of that, right? So I think that's what we've innovated with the India wallet.
Generally, the view on this subject ranges from a country like China, which has pretty much banned the whole thing. And then you've got countries like El Salvador, which is trying to, or which has already introduced Bitcoin as a legal tender. So this is a technical question, but the news reports out there suggest that the government plans to ban private cryptocurrencies, while there being a few exceptions. Now, to a layperson, Tanvi, could you help understand what the concept of private here means? Because one might argue that Ethereum or Bitcoin, they're already on public blockchain networks. What would private mean, or is there a little fuzzy logic there, and we'll have to wait until the D-Day comes?
I think there's no confusion at all there. I don't know why people are getting themselves confused. Private cryptocurrency is very much any non-sovereign currency. Anything that's not the rupee will be deemed a private cryptocurrency. So anything that's not the CBDC will be a private cryptocurrency. I think the government has been fairly clear about that. They've also laid it out in the 2019 report that they came out with. And private cryptocurrencies are fairly accepted terminology. It's used globally by the FATF and other bodies. There's no confusion there, at least not from the policy side.
Because there have been quite a few articles talking about what defines private, given that the whole concept is decentralized and these are on public blockchain networks. When there are, well, on the other hand, there are some tokens where you will have to go through hoops to get your money out of that particular currency, and hence
so those are just privacy coins. I mean, I don't think at our policy discourse level we have necessarily reached a place where we'll differentiate that. I do think that there could be some exceptions made for just the fundamental commodity like BTC and ETH. I mean, there's some precedent from other countries that they have been labeled commodities, right? Because they're sufficiently decentralized. But even that, I don't think is necessarily set in stone. I do think that when the government says it's going to not allow them in any form, or it would be that sort of a stance where they're not allowing it at all.
What would your recommendation be or stance be? I read one of your recent tweets where you advocate regulating it rather than banning it. And you've got, an option about a wallet that you very briefly talked about. So how does that work? What do you think should be the future of cryptocurrency in the country?
I definitely think this is going to power a very big shift globally. This whole technology is very important for India, and I think India has many advantages in it because of the amount of talent it has, and that's really all it takes to succeed in this industry. The reason why we very much believe you need to regulate is because there's simply no way you can be effective with a ban, and we've seen that play out in countries over and over. And we've laid that out also in the report we put out in the public domain now. There's examples everywhere, whether it's China or it's Nigeria or it's every country that has made a ban. Like in Nigeria, for example, they've had a ban since May, and as of the latest numbers, they are the second highest trading country for crypto. Right, this is despite a ban, because you have complete peer-to-peer movement, and there's nothing that can be done. So the only way to sufficiently limit risk is to bring it under some form of regulatory oversight. There, I think we have a lot of advantages with the India stack, and we have a lot of advantages just with digital identities. We've taken a step back from the whole debate of just classifying it as a security or commodity, because I think that's a very difficult question. I think many advanced countries also still struggle with it. For example, the US is still trying to figure out what Ripple is. And there's a lot of cases around that. But I don't think India can answer that question in one go. I think it's more about, well, how do you regulate it? And there, I think the answer is simpler, because all these assets, whether it's Bitcoin or it's Ethereum or it's Ripple or it's an NFT or it's $10,000 in crypto or $1 or $1 million, like they're all just a pair of keys. It doesn't matter what form they take, and everything you do with these assets is usually managed and operated through a wallet, whether it's MetaMask or it's Trust Wallet or it's Bentley Wallet or any other wallet. So the simplest idea that we recommend to the government is to just create its own KYC wallet, which is the India wallet. And this does not necessarily need to be new infrastructure. It could just be your MetaMask having some integration with the DigiLocker. This would then make a lot of things very easy for both users and the government and for businesses that are trying to operate here. And it will handle risks across all the asset types, right? Whether it's a exchange or it's a DeFi protocol or it's an NFT marketplace, like people can literally integrate anywhere through this wallet, just with a simple one-touch, one-time KYC process, which the government should ideally enable.
Is that the centralized part of the whole thing? Is that one exception perhaps where everything will be at one place so that it's at least regulated rather than it being completely left to the market's devices?
I mean, it could be just one centralized wallet if that's what the government chooses to do. It could just be a variety of wallet providers who are sort of complying with a certain technical standard and enabling this process. But yes, for the government does a couple of things. The first thing is it sort of KYCs Indian activity in the space. And so it adds jurisdiction to what is otherwise a very decentralized activity layer. It also gives people a sort of legal channel from where to link to the Indian banking system. Then that becomes a place where, then regulators, and there's a variety of regulators who will come in. It's not just going to be one who can regulate it. This becomes a sort of platform where you can do what they need to do. If they need to collaborate, regulate something like NFTs, and they can do it. If a single regulator needs to just manage the banking inflows and outflows that are coming from here, they can do it, right? It just creates that ring fence from which you can then start streamlining everything you need to do in this space, right? Otherwise, right now we have no structuring of the problem. Like we're not even asking the right questions, so we can't get to the answers.
Yeah, I think all of us, including retail investors who put in 100 rupees are researching, whether it's Google or even the technocrats in different organizations. Even the Reserve Bank of India plans to have its own CBDC, that is Central Bank Digital Currency. It hasn't been too long when the first CBDC was introduced. The Bahamas had launched it back in October last year. And now I think almost every country wants to know what it is about, and many are in different stages of their research. What is your take on the concept, and with India in the backdrop?
Yeah, it's interesting that you brought up the Bahamas. So incidentally, we also launched a year ago, and we had the governor of the Bahamas Central Bank speak at our launch. And our first study was on the Chinese CBDC. So we had reverse engineered it, and we had figured out what implications it has for the dollar, what implications it has for SWIFT, and the Chinese financial system in general. And that's a very disruptive design that they have with their CBDC. A lot of innovation that we never saw till date. And I think that also spurred a lot of other central banks to up the ante, I think, in terms of the design and the considerations they were giving to CBDC. And I think CBDC also, because of COVID and other reasons, is really sort of taken up as a concept now. So I think India's CBDC, from what we've seen so far, is fairly advanced. I think not much has been put out on it yet. And I think from December, you will start seeing that. CBDC is actually the first place in which our think tank started its journey and, worked quite extensively. And I think India will make a very advanced CBDC, as it should, because we have infrastructure that other countries simply don't have. India stack, there's a lot we can do. There's not much I'll say about it. You will be hearing very soon from the RBI governor as well within a month on that.
And there is a lot of promise that blockchain as the technology itself holds. There are enough books. I was reading one about blockchain as well, where, a refugee camp in Jordan where food is being distributed. There is an iris scan. And then that particular fact that you've received food is recorded on the blockchain so that nobody can tamper with it, not even the authorities, neither the thugs on this side. In India, how would you see blockchain and its applications? Overall, it's a well-documented fact that when the internet came in, you had immediate applications. You had e-commerce, so the middlemen were out. So there was something that was tangible. Blockchain as such has been slow to take off the block. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but in the world concept and in the Indian context, where do you see blockchain? And you've done a lot of work in it.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. It's a very big question. India, the potential has been fairly recognized. I mean, just the tamper-proof nature of it is something that's very valuable, even when you think about things like land records, or you think of subsidy services, or you think of like the whole PDS scheme that we have, which is a huge scheme, supplying the ration shops and the food grains, where there's often a lot of tampering. There's definitely a lot of resonance that technology like this can play a big role, right? And I think it's really been stuck, because when you actually come to implementing these things, and that's what I used to work on a lot of these projects at EY, and when it comes to actually implementing these projects, I mean, it becomes a question of who handles the infrastructure, right? Because at the end of the day, there isn't anything such as very distributed infrastructure. Like in the end, whoever's paying for it ends up managing the administration of it, right? And then it becomes, in many cases, just a very expensive way of doing what databases can already do, right? And I think that's where crypto really differentiates itself, because it has like a self-scaling system in it. It has its own incentive system built in. Anyone can plug in anytime. Like if you have to make a tamper-proof sort of a project, it's like far cheaper and easier to do it on an Ethereum blockchain rather than set up your own DLT network and enable it, right? Because that's much more expensive. As someone was saying in a recent government discussion I was in, that we used to think that blockchain was here to stay and crypto was a fad, but now, like 10 years later, we see that crypto has taken off and blockchain and DLT is very much non-existent, right? And it really comes down to incentives and how you self-sustain something, right? And I think it's just a matter of limiting these monetary risks. And then I think there isn't any other real objection on crypto.
I read on your website that you had organized India's largest hackathon on blockchain for public policy, I think for the government of Karnataka. How was the experience? Did you have geeks coming in and how was it?
Yeah, that was incredible. Actually, it was that was actually my first 2 weeks of my first foray into blockchain, right? And I was, you know, how it is in consulting. We have this quote of consulting is about baptism by fire. So
Yes.
I wasn't didn't know anything about it, but I was thrown into managing this, you know, like very quickly upskilled and connected
Right.
with a lot of the developers, and yeah, put together this huge hackathon. So we had some 600-700 developers show up, stay overnight for 2 days in Bangalore. Like we all camped out at this hotel, and you know what I had done is sort of framed all the policy challenges. So we took 5-6 departments in the Karnataka government, the police, the land records, the agriculture department, like framed out blockchain problems out of that. Yeah, it had some very innovative solutions that came out of
Yes.
there. For the government, it was a big, they quite liked this. And those pilots were also going somewhere, but then we also had the circular from the RBI come in around the same time. And so that sort of froze a lot of the
The circular being
activity
that
there.
banning financial institutions from trading in cryptocurrencies. Is that correct? The one that came in 2017-18, I guess. Was it?
In 2018, yeah, in April. That's pretty much froze the activity. So
Right.
the developers themselves were, you know, like they're doing even now. I think a lot of people migrating.
Right.
So,
And the last question, in the interest of time, Tanvi, is that you have on one side this technology, on the other you have retail investors, folks who know nothing about the technology but want to make a quick buck. Of course, it's volatile and mercurial, but is it safe when it comes to assets invested in these Indian exchanges? And how do you see it from an investing standpoint?
see, I'm not in a position to give investment advice, but I think when it comes to the safety of your asset, it's as safe as the exchange that you put it in. And there aren't really any like cyber security norms for these kind of activities, and you don't have norms around anything that you actually have norms around with other exchanges. So I think until that's done, you know, you're really on your own in a way. But I do think that's the ethos as well in crypto. I think if you see even pure DeFi, like you're very much on your own, and I think that's a little at odds with what people are generally used to. As you always have a recourse, or you have something, you have the law. Like here, there is nothing, to fall back on.
Those who don't understand it, but they've got some skin in the game, and there are some 15 million odd Indians who hold some or the other form of cryptocurrency. The other day, I got a WhatsApp message with some poha maker printing Bitcoin on the sack, saying that Bitcoin poha.
Yeah, we have in Bangalore a cafe which sells Bitcoin breakfast, and I think they sell NFT instead of tea.
Really?
And so I think there are a lot of jokes about that. It could basically be a completely virtual tea, which you spend like $500 on gas fees on, and then you never really drink it. So that's probably what an NFT is. I'm not sure.
That's a good one. I think yes, because you never hold the asset. It's just the digital trail of the asset that you can claim
Yeah.
to. Great, lovely. Thank you very much, Tanvi, for your time on this podcast. Thank you very much.
Thank you.